Good morning. It's Richard Cannell here from Small Island Gardener, and today's episode is going to be a really fun one. Fun and a bit facetious. I'm going to be taking on one of the biggest myths circulating around the pepper growing community, and that's about this plant here, Aji Charapita. Now, people are saying that these peppers, when dried, are worth 25,000 American dollars per kilogram. This is an outrageous claim, and I'm going to go step by step through the process of harvesting and weighing just to show you that this is not the real price of these peppers. Now, don't get me wrong, Aji Charapita is a fantastic pepper variety. It's one of my favorites, and I'm pretty sure it always will be. It's very high yielding, it's very tasty. The plant looks amazing. What's not to like? If there's ever to be an experiment done on the viability of this myth being accurate or not, I think that this is a fine candidate. When you look at this light gray patch on the ground here, that's where the pot used to be for the last few weeks. And these pods have ripened so much that when I moved the plant, a whole bunch of them fell off. So they're definitely ready for the picking. So what I'm going to do to make this experiment as valid and realistic as possible is I'm going to take all of the good looking peppers off the ground here, and I'm going to add these to the weight of it all. And there you have it. These are all, well, most of the peppers that were on the ground. They look really dirty, a little gross. There's a bit of spiderweb in there. But that's okay, it's all superficial, it's going to be washed. You might be asking yourself, isn't this really petty to be picking up all these peppers from the ground? And the answer to that is yes and no. You see, if it were just myself, picking for myself, and even just picking up the ground peppers for the seed business, I would say yeah, that's pretty petty, considering what's actually on the plant right now. However, to get into the spirit of this experiment, just imagine, these peppers are worth 25,000 American dollars per kilogram. You bet I'm going to make sure that every single one of these peppers is used. So I figure why not pick them for this experiment. So now that the easy part's done, time to move on to the actual plant. And it's not even as simple as picking the peppers for me. For my own record, I'm curious, how many peppers did this plant grow this year? Because I have record of last year's, and I want to see if the second year plant produces as much, more, or less than the first year, considering that it did not get any soil change, no amendments. It just continued to get watered throughout the entire season, and that's it. I'll let you know the answer to that at some point in the video too. So, without further ado, time to pick. Okay, so here we have it. Here's a bowl full of Aji Charapitas. It only took me 47 minutes to harvest all of them, and that was including me taking the time to adjust the camera angles. So that's a big job. It really is. And it's not over yet either. Now I have to take all of this into the kitchen, and I have to wash it because this greenhouse actually has a leak. And so if you look closely, a lot of these peppers are kind of dirty. There's arbutus trees hanging over the greenhouse, and they shed their leaves. They end up mulching and composting on the roof, leaks through, so it essentially rains compost into this greenhouse, and so that's why they're so dirty. Normally one should not have a job like that to do. So I'm going to soak them for a while, wash them, make them clean, get rid of all the leaves, get rid of the stems, and I'm going to give them away. Let's see how much all of these weigh by themselves before drying them. Alright, so I'm here in the kitchen now, and I'm going to get these peppers cleaned. So I'm just going to put them through the colander. and give them a good rinse under lukewarm water. I want to agitate them and also add a little bit of hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is amazing stuff. It breaks down into just air and water really. And it cleans so well. And because these things had sludge pouring down on them, I figure it can't hurt to sterilize them. And also, they create bubbles wherever there is something unsterile. And so those bubbles actually help to remove the grime and sludge. So I'm just gonna let them soak like that for a little while. I'm also gonna do this to the smaller bowl with all the peppers that I found on the ground, and then on to the next step. And I'm back. So here are all the soaked and washed Charapita peppers. They look excellent. They're not covered in dust or grime or dirt. Whatever it was that they were covered in, it's gone. And the same goes for all of the peppers that were found on the ground. They are clean. So they can be mixed together. Really, they didn't even have to be washed separately. That was kind of silly. So, give them a rinse once more. Okay, so I'm going to let them sit there and drain for a little while. Then I'm going to place them on a towel. And next, I will pour them all out here so that they can dry. Give a nice pat, rub. All right, they feel pretty good. This next step here is not something that you need to do. I'm just doing it for myself because I want to know how many peppers there are. So I'm just going to go ahead and count all of these before moving on to the next step. Okay, so after counting them all, there are 1,334 Aji Charapita peppers. Now, interestingly enough, this is fewer peppers than what I harvested last year. Last year I had 1,338. So it is about 200 less, but considering that I didn't fertilize it, I didn't change the soil, I barely pruned it at all, I just got rid of some of the smaller branches, that's actually pretty good. So what I'm going to do next season is I am going to prune it way back, and I'm actually going to either take the plant out of the pot and shave around the edges and add some new soil all around, or I'm just going to keep it in the pot and add some compost on top. I haven't decided yet, but either way, I am happy with this yield. That was a high yield, over 1,000 pods. So now the next step here is going to be for me to take all the stems off of the pods. This is a lengthy process as well, but it has to be done because if you're paying $25,000 for a kilogram of these peppers, you're not going to want to have any stems in them. So I'm going to go ahead and get to it. All done. Something really cool about this is that it took exactly 47 minutes to take all the stems and leaves off. That's the same amount of time it took for me to pick all these peppers from the plant. I suppose this makes sense considering how essentially I'm just picking it again. So that's how much time's been put into this project so far. No more stems, sepals, or leaves. It is just pure pepper. So now I've hit a fork in the road. There's two directions I can go here. If I just want to dry these peppers as is, then that's the route I could take. I could put them all in the dehydrator and then afterwards weigh them and see what I have. But because I operate a seed business, I'm going to want seeds from most of these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the seeds out, and this is a very lengthy and tedious process. I'm going to be at it all day. Maybe it's a 2-day job. I can't remember how long it took last year. I think that my brain sort of blocked out that memory. But this is a really good thing because it'll give us 2 scenarios that we could examine. In my research, I have not found anything about, these peppers selling for $25,000 per kilogram with or without seeds. So we're just going to do the math for both. So because de-seeding all these peppers is quite the process, I'm definitely not going to film this all for you guys. You'd be bored and it would take me forever to upload the video. Okay. So it's 1 o'clock in the morning and I've just spent the last 8 hours taking all of the seeds out of these peppers. I'm tired and my hands are burning and I want to go to bed now. So here's all the seeds. I've gone ahead and laid them all out on a cutting board so that they could dry over the next days. And here's the pepper. Notice how there's absolutely no seed in here. It is just pure Aji Charapita, all fruit. Split in half, seedless. Oh, I'm so tired right now. And everything burns. And here's all the peppers in the tray. So now I'm just going to leave the dehydrator on overnight and they should be done by the morning. So here they are, peppers all dry. There we go. That's it. All right, so I'm over in another room where we can now get started on the math. In total, one Aji Charapita plant yield 36.09 grams of fruit only. This is without seeds. And the same plant produced 41.37 grams of seed. When added together, the entire yield of the plant came to 77.46 grams of pepper and seed. To figure out how many plants we would need to grow in order to get 1 kilogram of Charapita powder, we must take 77.46 grams, which is the total of both seed and fruit, and divide that from 1,000, which is a kilogram. This would mean that I would have to grow 12.9, so let's round up and say 13 plants in order to get 1 kilogram of fruit and seed powder. If we take the weight of the fruit only, which is 36.09 grams, and divide that from a kilogram, that means that it would take 27.7, so 28 plants, in order to get totally seedless Aji Charapita powder. So planting a single seed into a pot of soil, it'll take about 5 minutes. Once the plant is a few inches tall and it's developed its first true leaf, it's time to pot it up into the next largest size. I prefer to use a 1 gallon because it gives it a lot of room to grow, so I don't have to pot it up so often. And this just takes 5 minutes to do. Now once enough time has passed and the plant is about a foot tall and it's looking nice and healthy, it'll then go into its final location. I prefer to grow peppers in pots for various reasons, so I like to grow them in 5 to 7 gallon pots. Usually 5 because they're the easiest to find and they grow sizable plants and the yield is fantastic. Once again, to put soil into the pot and put the pepper in there, it just takes about 5 minutes. So if we tally up all the times that it takes to pot up and plant the seeds, that comes to 15 minutes per plant. So next I would like to discuss watering. I chose the number 28 plants for 2 reasons. For one, that's the number that it takes to grow the worst case scenario number of plants, and 2, that's how many pepper plants I grew this year, so this is a very accurate total from my own experience. So on all the days that I water 28 plants, it takes me about 20 minutes to do so. The frequency of watering changes from month to month. So during the hottest months, the plants actually get watered 2 times a week. And at 2 times a week for 6 months, it adds up to 960 minutes. And then when the weather cools down, either in the autumn or at the beginning of spring, when it still isn't super hot yet, I'm only watering once a week. And this time goes on for about 3 months. So that adds up to about 80 minutes of watering for 3 months. And then there's the winter months, where it's just so cool the water doesn't really evaporate and the plants are relatively dormant. I only water once a month for 3 months. So that works out to be 20 minutes for 3 months. If you add all these times together, it comes up to be 17.66 hours. Now, for the sake of being conservative for this experiment, I've gone ahead and rounded up to 20 hours of watering time. So it took 47 minutes to pick the peppers from one plant. It took 10 minutes to wash all those peppers and to dry them as well. It took 47 minutes to remove the stems. And it took 5 minutes of my own personal time to put them into the dehydrator. And lastly, it took about 5 minutes to grind them and store them into a jar. You may notice that this doesn't include watering time or seed starting and pot up time. The reason why I chose not to include that in this equation is because it's unnecessary. You can't earn $25,000 with one plant anyways, so there's no point in me doing the math for one. When all of this is added together, that comes up to 1.9 hours of labor for one single plant. So for 13 plants, it's going to take 611 minutes to pick the peppers, 20 minutes to wash and dry them. It's going to take another 611 minutes to remove the stems, 30 minutes to dehydrate, 30 minutes to grind and store them, 600 minutes to water them throughout the season, and 195 minutes to start the seeds and pot them up. So this works out to be 34.95 hours. And when you break that down into 8-hour working days, that comes to a total of 4.37 days of labor throughout the entire year to grow 13 plants. Here's how much time it's going to take to grow and process 28 plants worth of peppers. It'll take 1,316 minutes to pick the peppers, 40 minutes to wash and dry them. It'll take another 1,316 minutes to remove the stems, 60 minutes to dehydrate, another 60 minutes to grind and store the peppers, 1,200 minutes to water the plants, and 420 minutes to start the seeds and pot up the plants. This comes to a total of 73.53 hours, or if you break it down into 8-hour working days, it'll take 9.2 days to grow and process all of those peppers from 28 plants. Now that we've done the math for how much time it takes to process these peppers with the seeds, let's now figure out how long it takes to remove the seeds from the peppers. It took me such a long time because I run a seed business and I want to make sure that those seeds are in top quality, so I had to remove the seeds before doing any dehydration. If you were to dehydrate the seeds, germination rate lowers significantly, so I did not want to go down that road. However, there is an easier way to remove seeds. What you do is you just dehydrate the peppers as is. You don't even need to cut them open. And once they're dry and crispy, you can roll them in between the palms of your hands. And then the pepper fruit becomes a nice fine powder, and then what you're left with is the seeds, because the seeds won't actually break down or grind in between your palms. I've experimented with this method in the past, and it really doesn't take very long if the peppers are super dry and crispy. So I've overestimated that to grind the peppers between the palms of your hands and then use a sifter to remove all the seeds, just having the powder go through the bottom, and then take that powder, make it even finer by putting that into a grinder, that should take about 1 hour per plant. So at 1 hour per plant, that means that if you're going to process 28 plants, that's going to add an extra 3.5 days to the otherwise 9.2 days that it would take to process seed and fruit of Charapita powder. This means that it would take 12.7 8-hour working days to process 28 plants worth of peppers. So if you've stuck with me through this entire journey, you are awesome. So let's get to the conclusion. Throughout this entire process, I did my very best to leave no stone unturned. I sat and I thought about it and I double-checked my math. I'm as certain as can be that this is accurate. And what it comes down to in the end is this. If you were to sell Aji Charapita powder with seeds, you would have to take care of 13 plants for a whole year and work 6 days in total. This is 6 working days. In the unlikely case scenario where somebody would pay a high price for the seedless powder, you would be looking to take care of 28 plants for a whole year and work a total of 12.7 days. So this is simple. Would you be willing to work under 1 week or 2 weeks for 25,000 American dollars? Well, here's the scientific answer. Heck yes. Of course. Who wouldn't? Well, maybe you are really, really wealthy, and I'm not talking to the 0.001% here. But for me, and for most likely you, I would say so. Because $25,000 is nothing to scoff at, and if I had to work just 12.7 days, so 13 days for that much money, oh yeah, that's a wonderful thing. So because so many people would be willing to work such a little amount of time for such high reward, this makes the myth totally implausible, because the market would be saturated with these farmers reaching their hands up to the sky saying, me, I'll grow it for that price, but nobody's buying for that price. I haven't ever heard a real life story of somebody paying this high price for the peppers. I don't know if you have. If you have, leave a comment down in the section below. I would love to hear from you. And hey, now that I've proved this myth wrong, do you want to prove me wrong? I will sell you this jar of Aji Charapita powder, seedless, for 900 American dollars. Contact me. But otherwise, I would say that this myth is totally busted. So spread the word, tell your friends, Aji Charapita is not the world's most valuable pepper. Thank you so much for going through this entire journey with me. I had a lot of fun, and I hope you did too. Until next time, goodbye.